Fill your thirst beside the river. Wash the journey from your hands. Feel the comfort flow inside you. Come this far, you understand. Fear's not allowed, where dreams can be lost or found.
Hi, and welcome to Healing Outside the Box. I'm Rosemary Lachance. I'm a Reiki energy healer and spiritual advisor.
And I'm Traci Crampton, and I'm an energy practitioner.
And we are dedicated to providing you with food for thought information and answers to all modalities of alternative healing, spiritual development, animal welfare, and environmental concerns in the form of guest speakers who are experts in their fields. We hope we can help you find the answers you are looking for. We encourage you to embrace the show with an open mind and continue to ask questions that will lead you to better health and greater understanding in your own life. We will give you our contact information at the end of the show if you would like to know more about tonight's show or any of our past shows. We hope you enjoy the show.
Here we are on number 74.
74, Traci.
Wow.
Congratulations.
We're making it all the way there.
Yeah.
And we have a really interesting subject for you tonight about near-death experience. And with us is Sarah Murray. I want to introduce you.
Hi,
Nice
Welcome,
to have you on our show.
Welcome.
Thank you so
very
much.
much.
And Sarah has had a personal experience with near-death. And she's come here just to share her experience, give us a little window into what that experience is like. Hopefully, we want to reach a lot of people out there who've maybe had similar experiences, so you feel that you're not alone. But just because I know that there's a lot of viewers who have questions about, what happens when we pass. And I know, there's different experiences out there, but this might shed a little light. So welcome to our show.
Yes,
Thank you very kindly. It's very lovely to be here.
So I understand, I guess we can start with, I understand that you had a car accident, a rollover. So you can go ahead and fill us in on what happened. You're thrown out the window, go, and then you take over.
Thank you. Yes, I was in a car accident in November of 2005, and it was a very serious one and near fatal, but obviously I'm still here. So, and there was a very long recovery period, and during that recovery period and during time in the hospital, I began to recall some things. And this was after I had become fully conscious again, and was recognizing that something had happened to me that had changed me for always. And I couldn't necessarily identify it at the time as a near-death experience. But I began to recognize that I felt a kind of not only peace, but also painlessness, which in the face of the injuries that I had in the car accident, was not the norm. And I knew that something had happened to me that transformed me. And I had, over a period of time, and I'm sort of grateful it happened that way. It wasn't this immediate recall.
Yeah.
It was a very gentle, almost beautiful process in a certain way of remembering that when I had been clinically dead due to the car accident, I had experienced what it was like to be on what some call the other side. I had had the experience, what for me, I now say was like going home.
That's nice.
Where I really came from.
Right.
Before I got into this physical body. And it was interesting because I remember a sensation of, a feeling of, but a real depth of, beyond a sensation, it was a depth of something inside of me, in
Like
my
a
very
knowing,
soul,
yeah.
where unconditional love dwelt after this experience. And
Wow, how beautiful is that? We all want to
not bad,
experience that.
not bad. And so I was gradually reoriented to the physical reality by the nurses, by the doctors, by my friends, by my family, my darling children. And it was explained to me, you've been in a very, very severe car accident. And at the beginning, when I became conscious again, it was very weird. It's the best word I can think of. To notice I had this body. Because in the near-death experience, I had gone out of my body. My soul had left my body, and like a lot of people have reported who've had these near-death experiences, either through some sort of injury or illness, where they have been clinically dead for a period of time and then they've been resuscitated, because modern medicine is able to do that so much more now. That, I knew that something had happened because I didn't recognize my body. When I had the near-death experience, as many report, I was floating above my body. I was looking down on this woman that people were feverishly working over, and this was in the trauma unit at the first hospital I was brought into. And I actually wondered, who is she? And I wonder what happened. It is so easy to be with the soul. That's what I learned, because we really are spiritual beings. Of course, having a human experience, having a human body as a vehicle for getting around,
but it's very
on
dense.
Earth.
It's such a dense experience.
It's very dense, very third dimensional, but it was very, very accommodating, I'll say, to be with my soul. Very, very easy. Yeah. I recall just loving it, and floating above my body. And it was odd because there is a sensation of knowing that you're dead somehow. You know that you're dead in that physical sense. Like your heart has stopped beating and they don't have a pulse. And they're rushing around and they're trying to get you back and so on and so forth. But there is a sense of being dead. And at first it's a little confusing. Yeah. Perplexing. But very briefly. And then I went into, as I explained earlier, this peacefulness and a painlessness. The extent of my injuries was horrendous, and that I don't recall pain is quite remarkable.
Yeah, it's fortunate too.
Very fortunate, very fortunate. And so that I was, after many months after the car accident, I ran into a friend of mine who took me aside and said, "Sarah, did you see the light?" And I'm thinking, yes, I did. And this opened up for me what I had been experiencing was a recall of having this near-death experience and what had happened and what it was like and all of that. And this person, I believe, was sent by the higher power.
Oh, I just got a huge
God,
chill.
to open this up for me. Because it's the kind of thing one may not know quite how to share it with other people. It's not every day that you're dead and then you come back.
Right.
You know, and I've got all the indie jokes. It's funny you don't look nearly dead, you know, and stuff like that. But, you know.
You look very much alive
well,
to
you
us.
know, it's funny. I was thinking about, is there near-death makeup I should wear for the show tonight?
Oh, my
you know,
God.
and stuff like that.
No kidding.
But I know that having now shared about my experience with many people, including on shows like this one, as well as at a near-death experience support group down at UConn Medical Center in Farmington, which is the oldest of the near-death experience support groups in the country. It was started by Kenneth Ray Moody, very, very well-known people who are researchers in the near-death experience field. And this gentleman who came up to me and said, "Hey, did you see the light?" is very involved with that group. And he's a dear friend. His name is Walt. And he said, I want to talk to you about this. And so
I find it interesting that you had that connection with him beforehand. Like you were in each other's lives for a reason, you know?
Absolutely. I
Beautiful.
agree with you, Traci. I have become even more aware since the near-death experience of that very thing, that people are placed in our lives and we're placed in theirs, and it's all part of this amazing divine plan. And everything has its purpose and its reason under heaven, and very definitely believe in that ebb and flow of that process, you know. And when I became aware, the memories flooded of what had occurred. My friend Walt opened it up for me. He asked me would I come up and speak at UConn Medical Center at the near-death group and tell the story. And it's interesting also, I've told my story there a number of times. Unlike a dream, a near-death experience, you continue to remember aspects of it. In a dream, you have the dream, you remember what you remember, maybe you write it down, but you don't later say, oh yeah, and there was also this in the dream. But with a near-death experience, what myself and others have noted is you tend to gradually remember what occurred. And
yeah, I think with dreams, if you don't remember like that morning, it's gone.
Right.
It's fleeting.
Most of the time.
Yeah, that's true. And having a near-death experience is very, very different. Although dreams are wonderful and teach us a lot, the near-death experience is the gift that keeps on giving. That's what I just say.
There you go.
But I feel very fortunate today to have had this experience. And when I was, as I said, at the beginning, perplexed, I was confused, just briefly, and then went into that peacefulness, I became very aware that my soul had left my body. I understood that at some level in remembering this as best that I can put into language, that I was with who I really am. You know, who any of us are
essence,
truly is that spiritual essence. And then we are here in this world and we're human beings and we have a human personality and we live our lives and we have our lessons and all the rest of it. But having had the near-death experience, I have come to see everything so much more vividly that this isn't all random stuff that's going on.
Right.
Now, were you spiritually seeking before this
I had been
experience?
spiritually seeking. I had been coming out of a period in my life prior to the car accident of adjusting to a divorce. Also in great heartbreak over the breakup of another relationship, and I was extremely angry and extremely resentful. And yes, somewhere in there I had been spiritually seeking, but I had not found peace. I had not found yet a trust in this whole process of being a person in this world, doing the best I can, and not understanding why I was always so angry and resentful. And in the near-death experience, as I said, I very quickly, happily, was out of my body. That was no problem. I was happy to leave. I mean, my body was going through some stuff. Let the medical people take care of it. I went traveling, and I soul travel, and I did rise very quickly.
Yeah.
The memory of this is that I rose very quickly into the heavens. It's just very rapid. It's like a whoosh. And that's what it was for me. That was my experience.
And that, from what you've known, like meeting with other people who've had this experience,
Yes.
does it differ?
It can be
from
different
person
things
to
for different people. That's absolutely right. And it can be based on what you may believe at the time
Right,
that
your
you
belief
have in your
system,
head,
which
what you're
we'd love to
comfortable
go
with,
in.
what
Right.
your interests are, and you know, who do you think you want to see while
Right.
you have a little contact
Right.
with the other side. You know, you want to see those you love, including animals that you've loved. And I had many animals from my childhood, and I saw them too. And
It's nice for people to know the animals are there too.
The animals are there. Your beloved pets are always going to be with you, and I say that to the audience. You'll never lose your pets. They never really are gone.
That's
it's a wonderful thing to know.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah, but I did see in the experience, as I said, I rose just like to the heavens. It was beautiful, and a lot of people have reported being greeted by beings of light. They might not be able to identify them, but there's something there, like a love, like a light, like an energy, and you're welcomed. I didn't have a name for these beings of light. I couldn't identify them necessarily, but I knew that I was safe with them, and then having that overview of the universe, just looking at everything, and just kind of going, wow, and also noticing the presence of a very kind guardian angel who told me she'd been with me since I was a little girl. Since I had been born, she had been my guardian angel and had watched out for me through a very tumultuous childhood, that she had always been there. And I felt very comfortable with her. So in a sense, I kind of reunited with my guardian angel, and I remember speaking with her because I was looking down at, and I've heard many people say this, they can actually look down, they see planet Earth as we think of it when kids in school see the picture of the globe and all that. And I saw all these light beams coming off planet Earth, and I asked the angel, I said, well, what are they? And she said, those are the prayers of people.
Oh my God.
That's nice.
What a chilling.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, like people praying. And they are taken up by the angels to God, to the Supreme Being. And then there were some that were particularly powerful beams of light coming off planet Earth, and she said, and those are the prayers of mothers for their children.
Oh, it made me cry.
She said, so I said, so the prayers of mothers for their children go first. She said, yes, they go first. But she said, all prayers are always heard and answered. And then I went on, and with that wonderful encounter with the angel, I thought about my own children, and their love was right there with me throughout. The love of many, many people who were praying for me. So maybe some of that light I saw coming off the planet were prayers for me.
Yeah. That's right.
And so I then went into what people report as the tunnel experience.
So that wasn't your first experience. That's interesting.
It was.
Some people say that that's the first thing they see.
Well, I had that sort of lovely floating in the universe. I got to kind of get that big picture view. We don't have the technology here for that. It might be what the astronauts can see, or the satellites can photograph that are out there in space. But that's what I saw. That's what I was.
That free-floating, spacious.
It was very lovely,
beautiful,
and very safe feeling, and then came this sense of this supreme being. There've been these beings of light, and then this supreme being. I just felt with this whole supreme being of all the universe, the creator of all the universe, who kind of was just, hello, how you doing? And I felt such love embraced by that supreme being, that light, that God. And I also recognized that I was a part of that all of us are a part of that God of whom we may call the creator. Some may call it Allah, nature, light,
divine,
love, the
creator,
divine,
everything.
whatever one may call it. What I learned in the near-death experience was it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you call that force, that being. That is the truth about you, all of us, is out of that love that we were created with, or that light, or that supreme being for whom we are the children of the entire universe. And And I've never before or since experienced such an extraordinary love. Every piece of me, whatever my spiritual body was at the time, and I was out of my physical body. But I think a lot of that love may have gone down to my physical body to help me heal also. I believe that is so as well. And then I went on to, as I said, the tunnel, and there's just a little darkness at the beginning. What shocked me about the tunnel was it wasn't a small tunnel. It was, the experience that I had anyway, was very wide. It was like a big, big parking lot. But it was a tunnel. And there was a bit of darkness, but I saw light ahead. And I went towards that light. I was propelled towards that light. I was drawn to it, and I went towards it. And I mentioned animals that I had loved. This horse that I just loved so much, who I grew up down in Virginia, and my father was what is known as the horse whisperer. So that I learned to love animals, to be kind to animals. My parents treated every animal we had with tremendous dignity and respect and love.
That's nice.
And that's all I have known is that way of being, and the great companions and teachers animals are for us, you know. And
Oh, really?
I saw my horse that I loved, this little beagle puppy that I loved. I saw this dog, the one dog we had that wasn't a beagle, because my father loved beagles. We had this one dog, and I named her Tulip, because my mother had beautiful tulips in her flower garden, and that was my dog, Tulip. I saw Tulip, and I remember, you know, going back into my childhood, the day I went out to the backyard, and Tulip was lying in the yard, and I thought just sleeping. So I went over to Tulip and realized that Tulip had passed, and I remember sobbing, and I had the dog's head in my lap, and my mother came out, and she comforted me, and she said, "Sarah, don't you worry, honey. You'll see Tulip again." And she was right. My mother was always right. So I saw my Aunt Emily and some other dear, dear loved ones, but beyond that was sort of a parting of the sea in a certain way, as though they were saying to me, okay, now you need to move on and have this experience. And so I moved forward, and there was, and I'll show the picture, my experience of going into the other side, the afterlife plane, so to speak.
It'll take a minute for us to get a close-up.
That's
We'll
fine.
get a close-up
What
of it.
am I holding this to the right camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold it down a little bit because it's reflecting.
There's a little glare.
No, turn
Yeah.
it down.
No,
Turn it.
Turn it down.
There we go.
Good?
All right.
Okay. Well, anyway, this is a Monet painting. Now, as I said earlier, people experience what they believe, what they love, what they're interested in
Right.
in near-death experiences. And some people have very religious experiences with this, as they go in with very strong religious beliefs about death. My belief about death was not one of fear, and I attribute that mostly to my mother, because she was not afraid of death. And I was with my father and my mother when they had passed, and neither one of them were afraid. And that was a great experience for me, to have been with them when they passed, which was prior to my having had the near-death experience. But they were not afraid. And I always thought of this place you go after you die as very beautiful. And guess what? It was. And it looked as best like this picture that I can describe it, is this Monet's gorgeous picture of a flower garden and the curved bridge. And there is, in my recall of the experience, was a body of water, which is very frequent in near-death experiences. One may see a river or some body of water which is, you know, moving on. You know, it's a connecting piece, the body of water. And there was the curved bridge. Now comes the next part, where I am totally enamored of this place, these unearthly surroundings. And
Do you feel like the
really,
quality of light was different?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It's ethereal. It's not anything I've ever seen, except maybe occasionally close in nature, but nothing like this have I ever seen on earth, to be honest.
Colors were brighter and everything?
Everything
Yes.
was deeper, brighter. Every color spoke of something about my soul, or the souls of any of us. And anyway, I'm going in this beautiful Monet garden, radiant, gorgeous, and very safe place. And then I hear the voice of my mother. Now, my mother had passed 6 years before I had this experience. My father had passed over 30 years prior to my having had this near-death experience.
Are you finished with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom, I'll just say, she was on this end of the bridge.
Okay.
And she appeared to me so I would recognize her. As people report, their loved ones come. And she appeared to me, and I knew exactly who she was. And my father was standing beside her. Interestingly enough, he appeared much younger than my mother, and they say women are vain.
Really?
But my father appeared like totally gorgeous, about 30, 35 years old. And,
younger version of himself.
Yeah, and very young, kind of how he looked when my mother married him, but my mom was a little bit older. And
That
she
could-
had on an apron, and she had the white hair and the kind of granny glasses, and
That could be
You know?
because that's what you remember, the loving part of,
Yeah.
of that.
I think for my memory of my father and how he appeared to me, he appeared well to me. My father died of alcoholism, and so that ravaged his body and his life. Didn't take his soul though, but he appeared as the stud muffin, film star, like very handsome guy, My mom appeared as that very comforting mother who baked every Saturday.
Aww.
And she did, and she did bake every Saturday, and she had the same apron on that she wore every Saturday to do this baking. It was one of those full-length aprons to keep her lovely outfit all clean, and it had repeated patterns of Thomas Jefferson's Monticello on it. And she's wearing the apron.
That's probably
and she's
'cause-
kind of yoo-hooing me, and basically indicated to me, don't you dare cross that bridge. And I wanted to. I wanted to keep going. And she said, go back, honey, it's not your time. And I was not real happy about that. I'm like, wait a minute, Mama, this is nice here. I like it here. This is beautiful. And she said, honey, we love you wherever you are.
Oh.
And my father chimed in and said, your mother's right. And I recognize what many people have talked about is one may be greeted by a loved one who's departed, so to speak, who you had a tremendous trust for.
Right. So whatever they
And-
say, you're going to be.
Right, and my mother was, and in a certain way is, the one I have trusted the most. And I always believed her, and she never steered me wrong. She always gave me very good guidance. And she was also a woman to be reckoned with who didn't say no to my mother either. So I obeyed her on the other side. I knew I'd better. I might be in serious trouble. And then my father, who, beautiful man, he had been a very severe alcoholic in this life, and that had been his journey, and he died of alcoholism, and I was with him when he died, and he said to me, you're a wonderful daughter. And it was interesting. He'd never said that to me when he was on earth, but he said it in the present tense, like I was still a wonderful daughter to him. That hadn't changed.
Yeah.
We were still in
It's not over. You still have a journey together.
Relationship. We still have a relationship. I still have a relationship with my mother, and having that near-death experience has helped me to see that where there is love, it never ends.
Right.
Love is eternal. It
And
truly
that's so
is.
important for people who may have had difficulties with a parent who's passed or a loved one who's passed, who they feel there's no closure, no forgiveness, or that relationship doesn't end, and you can still speak to that person
Absolutely.
and connect with that person.
we can, and they're very close by, and they love us very much. And whatever lessons we may have had together when they were here on Earth, well, what I learned was I must see that at some level I chose to have this particular person as my father and my mother as my mother. And when I see it as a choice, it takes out the anger and resentment. I was like, okay, well, I chose to be with him. You know what? Today, because of the near-death experience, you couldn't take away anything that's happened in my life, no matter how difficult it seemed at the time. I am grateful for all of it now, and that's one of the things that the near-death experience has given me, acceptance and peace of whatever has happened, because I can see the bigger picture now since the near-death experience.
What a beautiful way to be.
It's great to have that, yeah.
You know, and what I understood also out of this experience, which I think is so important for people to know, is that forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves. You know, I struggled through a lot of years of anger and resentment at my father. You know, because of his alcoholism and how it was that he behaved, because he was an active alcoholic. And what that was for me growing up, and what was it I was supposed to learn from that, though? I stopped feeling like a victim. I stopped blaming after the near-death experience. I learned about the power of forgiveness. How could I not forgive my father? I had chosen to have those experiences with him. He was doing his part of it. I was doing mine.
Yeah, it's a big play.
Yeah. And you mentioned it's a big play, and it is. And I did have, some people describe being with this Supreme Being, and maybe this Supreme Being will kind of escort you through a movie of your life. And like some call it the life review. And the Supreme Being is there, or my experience of it was, the Supreme Being was there to help me get a perspective on, actually, not my whole life review. It is like watching a movie, third-person perspective. In my case, I didn't see a full life review. I saw a couple of what appeared to be at the time they occurred very negative experiences, and then a couple of very positive experiences. And I was just given a little guidance about other ways to perceive those things. And so that was extraordinary for me. And like a lot of people, I was real reluctant to return. One, I know my mother said, you got to go back. And she's doing this. You know.
Oh, boy.
She said that, and I knew that she was helping me. She was telling me, you know, I had more work to do. My mission was not fulfilled. But I said, I got God here. I'm going to talk to him again, because, you know, we got to make a deal on this thing. If I'm going back to Earth, I got to have the help I'm going to need to fulfill whatever the work is that's still undone. So I said, I said to God, so you're going to provide me, I'm sure, with all the resources and help I'm going to need to finish up whatever it is I need to finish up.
Oh, boy.
And at that moment, this higher being asked me, do you want to move on? What I was being asked was, do you want to go on to the other side? Do you want to move on to be where your parents are? And I said, yes, I do, but I know that I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to go back to my life on Earth. And a lot of people that I've talked to who've had near-death experiences, the doctors have resuscitated them, and they've been so mad at the doctors, and they'll say, "Why did you bring me back? It was so nice, you know."
I've read experiences where people become depressed because here's this gorgeous place and this unconditional love, and then they're like, "I'm back. What am I going to do?"
Well, you know, it is interesting to come back into the body, but the beauty of it is, and what I learned anyway in my experiences, there is no reason why I can't take what I experienced and bring it here. And that's what I try to do every day of my life from that point on that I had the experience, and to be of service and to continually find out what it is I'm supposed to do for the rest of my time here. And every day it is revealed, as long as I am willing to work with those who guide me
And be
and
present.
have a very conscious, close contact with this higher being, this supreme being, who, by the way, has a marvelous sense of humor.
Do you think
And-
for sure he was God, or maybe a higher, like a higher angel, a guide, a teacher?
I believe that I saw all of those things, to tell you the truth. There were times when, as I said, there were light beings, particularly when I first came into the tunnel experience, I couldn't identify at that time. And it was okay with me that I couldn't.
Right.
And even to this day, I don't know the names of all the angels that sometimes I experience around me, or who exactly may be all of my spirit guides. I have a little understanding of some of it, but I don't worry about that so much. I just know that there are beings that are guides and who help us and who are very available to assist us in learning whatever we need to learn while we're here on Earth. And also, what I did want to share, which was interesting, because you had mentioned, Traci, about, why would I want to come back to Earth when it's so beautiful here?
Yeah.
Remember how I had shared that when my soul left my body, and I was floating above my body and didn't even recognize it. But I was okay with that I didn't recognize whose body that had belonged to. It's a different experience when the soul comes back into the body. For me, it was.
What was that like?
It was kind of like, what is this?
You gotta try and squeeze me back in there.
Please. That was not an easy experience.
Yeah.
But the people were very kind to me at this particular hospital. My children were extraordinary. My ex-husband was extraordinary. Friends were extraordinary. And they just very gently, gradually told me about what happened. And I would ask a nurse, because I didn't understand what my leg was for. I didn't get it. What was this thing here? And she said, Sarah, eventually we're going to get you walking again. And that your legs are what you're going to walk on. You got feet attached
So
to
it
your
was like
legs.
being a baby,
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
like, here, I'm in this vehicle, and I don't know what to do with it, right?
Yeah, it was the leg bones connected to, all that. So it took a little while to get that reality back, but it never left me where I had been. It hasn't left me still.
You had told us that it was like 3 different times you came back, and then you died and came back 3 times.
Recorded 3 clinical deaths. Yes.
So these things happen at those particular
Right,
times. You
yeah.
tell it like it is, but I know it happens faster than that when you're...
It's very quick.
Yeah.
But it's also not Earth time that you're experiencing this.
Right.
Right.
There is no
Timelessness,
time out of this dimension.
Right.
We've decided to have clocks and all of that here. But, it's just like a month before my car accident, I had this experience for the first time since my dad had passed, which was 30 years prior. I experienced for the first time since his death his presence, his spirit, his love, his energy. And I was so grateful, but I was also a little ticked off at him. And I just that sense of, well, where was he all this time? Because for me, it was 30 years. And I thought, he's got a lot of nerve. Another of my...
Yeah, I've worked
He
with...
was probably learning.
He was, and he told me that.
Yeah.
He told me, because I asked him point blank, I said, Daddy, what took you so long? He says, where I am, there is no time.
Yeah.
And he shared with me that he was receiving help over what for me, Earth time was 30 years, but that he was receiving help to make restitution and come to understanding and healing
Exactly.
for how he had hurt his family.
Exactly, yeah.
In his time on Earth as my father, as my mother's
we're
husband.
schooled here and we're schooled
Right,
there,
And he told me he had therapy there and everything else, and that he was learning.
People think when
And-
they pass on, they go over there, it's just going to be,
all-knowing,
oh yeah,
yeah.
whoop, I'm going to be an angel now.
Your soul,
I don't
your
think
soul
so.
is still evolving.
That's
you know?
right.
It's not-
The minute
I know.
you wake up, you're
It's
still that
amazing.
same person you were here on this planet.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
like you said, you
Yeah.
have to keep on learning
You
over
do.
there and learning till you get it
do.
right.
But you do have the blessing with a near-death experience of knowing that that's so.
Exactly.
You know, get to see that it's really okay. And you will see everybody again that you've ever loved. And not only that, you may be experiencing their presence a lot if you're open to it.
Yeah.
While you're still here living as a human being,
Yeah.
like with my mother never left. Okay, you know, and my mom, she said to me, I think this is shortly before she died, and her death was kind of unexpected. In the sense that no one had said, oh, your mother's got this and she's about to die.
Okay.
You know. But she had a premonition. She knew that something was coming. And so she took my hand one day and she looked at me and she said, Sarah, I will never, never leave you.
Wow.
And I said, oh, I hope you never do. I don't think I could bear it. And I thought she meant when she, you know, that she wasn't going to die.
Never gonna die, yeah.
But no, what she meant was she truly would never leave me. Nothing would part us. And
How beautiful.
I found that to be so of my father, too. And I forgave him for taking what for me was 30 years Earth time to
Reveal.
come back to me, though, as a healed soul. He
Right.
came back.
It's
All
wonderful.
of
He did his work, yeah.
Alcoholism doesn't exist there.
Right.
And he said to me, I'd like to be your father now and watch out for you if you would allow that. And I said, oh, absolutely. And then a month
So
later,
gentle to ask for permission.
he
you
did.
know?
He
asked
learned
me,
a lot.
He asked
God
me
bless
what
him.
I
He learned a lot.
he's a really powerful soul, and I kind of knew that when he was my dad on Earth and everything. I mean, I always had this sense that he was a good soul, and I remember when he was on his deathbed, he asked me what he had done when he was drinking and what had happened, and some of it was pretty severe stuff. But I told him what I could because it was very heart-wrenching for me, you know. But he looked at me and he totally validated everything. He said, Sarah, if that's what you say happened, then that's what happened. He didn't tell me I was lying, and I wasn't, you know. But he had blacked out
Yeah.
while drinking, so he didn't remember a lot of this. And he asked my forgiveness, you know, and again, when his soul appeared to me 30 years later after his passing, and he said he wanted to be my dad again, that happened just before this car accident.
Oh,
Just before this car accident where I saw my father on the other side.
you
in
had
the
like an
near-death
out-of-body experience?
I
Or
saw
what?
my father in the near-death experience.
Oh, in the near-death
you know. But because he had sort of gently come back into my consciousness, he was able to be there standing next to my mother, as I said, at the other end of this bridge I saw, and tell me.
Another trusting soul.
Yes.
You were able to trust
I
him.
trusted him at that point because he had begun to rebuild his relationship with me because of what he was learning and how he was growing and how he was healing on the other side. And you're right. You're right. It doesn't stop. We keep learning. We're always evolving. Here, there, everywhere. You know, and I'm glad to be back on Earth. I'm glad I made it back. One of the main things was my children. And I just want to speak a little bit about them.
Absolutely.
Because I love them so much. And it was their love that kept kind of tugging at my mother's heart during the near-death experience. And I could hear them saying, Mommy, please don't leave us. Please, Mommy, we know you're coming back. And it was interesting because that got to me. I heard it. And when this higher being asked me, you know, do you want to go on? meaning do you want to just fully be dead and go to the other side and do whatever you do there?
It's interesting that you had that choice, you know.
You do have a choice, and I want to emphasize we have choices here on Earth. We have choices about all of that. We have choices in other dimensions. And so I remember when this being asked me if I wanted to move on, I remember thinking of John, my son, and Mimi, my daughter, calling me to come back. And I said to this higher being, I need to go back to Earth. My children need me. Mm-hmm. And they did. You know, they really, really did. And I also have a beautiful granddaughter today. She's now 2 years old. Her name is Olivia Hope. But, you know, my children evolved into who I always saw them to be through this car accident. An experience like this affects everybody within the circles of the person. It affects everybody, but I was affected by everybody too.
Yes.
Every person who the first ambulance driver, the person who was the pilot on the Lifestar helicopter that got me to the trauma unit, you know, every doctor, every nurse, every hand that held my hand, the medics, the state troopers. It was a state trooper who pulled me out of the first near-death experience. He gave me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And it was an extraordinary experience for him, which he shared with me later. He came down to the hospital to see me because he said, you were definitely dead. There were no signs of life. Mm-hmm. And he said, your mouth, your lungs, your brain was oozing blood. And he said he kneeled beside my body and he prayed, asking what to do. And he was told to give me air. And he couldn't understand how air could get through all that blood that was down my throat and just oozing out of my head, my lungs, everything was bleeding.
Wow.
And he said suddenly my chest started moving up and he was getting a slight pulse. And that particular gentleman risked his own job and his own life to get to me, to do this
and
for
he listened
me.
To that intuitive.
And what I knew was every person placed in my life at that time, this was all part of a divine plan. I believe that fully today.
As it is with all of us, yes.
With all of us, not just me.
No, but
absolutely.
I'm glad you're saying it because you've had the experience.
Yeah. I knew that was the guy that was supposed to be there. Why was it this gentleman who was willing to take this risk, that happened to be on duty at that part of I-95 on that particular morning? It's got to be somebody truly, or some being, or some force.
Nothing in life is a coincidence.
No,
everything happens for a reason.
No,
it all seems so random, but
it does,
it's not.
But it's not. And that reason is always for our spiritual growth.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Rosemary, entirely. And, you know, above all, is to know, for me, that the life that I live today, the life that any of us have the opportunity to live today, is so extraordinary. Right here on good old planet Earth that we all complain about. I still do that too. I'm still in the human form. And, you know, but there's a lot less of that moaning about stuff now. Something happens. I remember something Krishnamurti said. Well, here's my secret, he said. I'm all right with what happens. That simple.
Yeah.
You know, and I am today more and more, because as I said earlier, near-death experience is a gift that keeps on giving. Because all the time my life is getting better. All the time my awarenesses are getting more heightened. All the time I'm starting to see people's souls more than a human personality. Because let's say I don't like something about a person's human personality. Yeah. And I run into that, we all do.
Right.
You know, I've learned to see past that today.
It's an illusion.
Yeah, that their souls is what I can see today. And that's all due to this near-death experience. So, you know, for me, it's just the most beautiful gift I've ever been given. And my accident, to me, was supposed to happen, as Rosemary had mentioned.
Accident was no accident.
The accident was actually not an accident. It was part of the plan for my life so that I could become a more aware spiritual being, and it's my intention to be of help to others.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What do you feel your mission is now in life since you've been back?
My mission is every single day is to love. And every single day is to go that extra mile.
And it's so simple. I mean, like, you know,
Very
our
simple
mission
stuff.
isn't complex. It's not some...
It's not a big scientific theory here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's real simple. It's to love, you know, and love includes many, many things. And sometimes to love someone is to let them go.
Yes.
Right.
And that's a very loving act.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are many forms of love.
What I learned today.
Did you?
Yeah.
So I also think I want to mention very importantly, at least for me, that I hope to share with others, and I hope and pray that it's of help to others, is the absolute power of forgiveness.
Yes.
I cannot live my life today holding anger and hatred and resentment towards another human being.
Yeah.
I don't care what they've done. I can't do it. The experience that I had showed me that for whatever reason, that person was put into my life as a teacher. And I always like to say, our teachers don't necessarily come in particularly attractive packages. It's, you know, maybe we wouldn't notice anything if they all came in pretty packages, you know. So I think that it's really important. And here's the other thing that's so great is not to know anything at all. It's just great.
Freedom not to have it out, try and figure it all out.
I'm going to figure it out. I'm just here.
Yeah, I was just reading in this Paul Ferrini book about, it's called Silence of the Heart, about, you know, just don't plan, just be, you know, like, and it's so, it just takes out,
Just be.
he's like, look at all the plans you've ever made, how they always change, you know, they're always changing, and there's disappointment and there's difficulty within that change. But if you just didn't plan and you just let life unfold, you know.
Living in the moment is what we're all supposed to do.
That's another really good
Just
point.
living in the moment.
Yeah.
But we don't.
Yeah. It's
We
being
think
in
about the
present.
past. We think about the future. And then,
Well,
you know,
That's probably part of human nature.
right. But I mean, that past
Yeah.
is already done.
Yeah.
And the future, we never know how it's going to turn out anyway.
Right.
We make
The
all
curse
these things.
of time.
Yeah. Living in the moment.
Yeah.
But you said be, just like you said.
Well, it's
Yep.
really great not to know.
Yeah.
But also, I had mentioned choice.
Frees you.
We do have choice, though. You know, I mean, I believe, this is my personal belief, and the near-death experience is what gave me this belief, and that is that we do co-create
Yeah.
with a higher being how our life's going to go. We have a lot to say about it. I had a lot to say about whether I was going to truly kick the bucket and my obituary would be in the newspaper,
Yeah.
or whether I was going to come back here and be Sarah again, and in that same body, which they patched up really well, you know. For that, I'm eternally grateful to the medical people who worked with me. They were extraordinary. And I believe that a higher power was working through them without any question.
Oh, yeah.
That, you know, here I am. And so it's not any real secret about life, is what the near-death experience taught me. It's a mystery, but it's not a secret. We're here to live it.
Right.
And as Rosemary said, every single moment is precious, and it's a gift. Does that mean we like everything? Of course not.
No, there has to be
Yeah.
contrast.
There will be contrast, but that gives us the flavor of life and the depth of life. It would be very, very boring if it was this
Flatline.
plateau, like a flatliner, like I was briefly there. But I am very grateful to say that I can never live life the same way. I trust today. I was a worrywart. Oh my goodness! So just like my dad in that regard, my father could worry about everything
So you've
all
just
night long,
surrendered
not
that.
be able to sleep. I didn't sleep as well last night because I knew it was going to be on this show, which doesn't speak too
You had a
highly of
human
what I
moment.
just said. But I'm still human.
You're still human.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
thing. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
perfect, you wouldn't be here.
Absolutely.
And
But
those
you
highs-
return to those moments of consciousness
Yes, you do.
much
so that
more
you can
easily.
say, yeah,
You do.
right.
You do.
And when it happens,
Yeah.
those highs and lows are what shake us
Yeah.
up, like
Yeah.
the salad dressing and all those
Yeah.
stuff's on the
Right.
bottom.
Yeah.
Shake us
Otherwise
all
we
up
would be
to see. Oh,
flatlining,
okay, we
you
still
know?
got this, or the onion when you peel all the layers, all those different analogies that people talk about.
We
But
learned through
That's
that.
you have to have the highs and lows.
You really,
you can't go
do.
like that, like you just
Yeah.
said, you know.
Yeah, you get to understand that you also participate in the lessons that other people are here to learn. And they
Right.
help you, you help them, sometimes with a teacher, sometimes with a student.
Yeah.
And I have a poem that I wrote if there's time.
Yeah, actually,
Yes,
this would be a
there's
good time because we're wrapping up. So if you want to
Very
share that
good.
with our audience, and then we can.
Absolutely. And I wrote this poem a number of months after the car accident. The car accident was in November of 2005, and I was able to write this poem in May of 2006. I entitled it Requiem for a Car Accident. I dedicated it to the many people, including my darling children and all my many friends, and the people who came through for me. And I mentioned the state trooper, who was the first one who kept me from totally kicking the bucket. So we got to thank this guy because he started that whole trail of keeping me here, and I am grateful to him. And I say here in my author's note that I don't have any memory of the accident itself.
Okay.
I don't. I remember up to it.
Okay.
But the aftermath has become the most profound experience of my life, though every name could not be listed here in my dedication. Every single one is embraced in my heart. And the poem again is Requiem for a Car Accident. The first quiver of light came through a room I've never been in before, a trauma unit I can barely remember and don't think I took much note of when I was there either. I was too busy staying alive. Why didn't I die? I asked my soul. The answer? Because, Sarah, you wanted to live. A stunning and simple reply from my soul working overtime. No, I don't remember the room of the machines designed to keep the physical body pumping, but I'm very grateful for that room because there was love in it and hands holding mine. Little hands, big hands.
Let me just
Hands of caring, belonging to gracious loved ones who stayed by my side when I did not really know where I was or why, until I came forth to life again. Mimi, my tiny daughter of power and grace, who never believed that I would go. You stood by my bed and my soul, believing in my life force and in God's wisdom. And my dear son John, strong and true and decent, you were always there, loving Mom, tall and proud, such a gallant gentleman. Both of my children remind me of their grandmother Lois, infinitely devoted to me, seeing my goodness even when I did not see it in myself.
And
Sarah, we may have to
Stop.
Yeah. I apologize.
Oh no, it's all right.
But
It's all right.
We have to
You'll
give
have
the credits and
That's fine.
And
That's
how to
fine.
get in
I'm
touch
just
with you.
glad I got the part in about my kids.
yeah,
Okay.
And that
something
was
to live for.
That was important for me
Okay, we're gonna
All right.
to acknowledge
switch
my
to
children.
the show info, and thank you, Sarah, for
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
For information about this show or any of our past shows, and to find out when our shows will be playing in your area, or if you have any questions, you may email us at healoutsidethebox@yahoo.com or call Rosemary at 203-627-7966 or Traci at 203-232-3405. And please do visit us on Facebook to continue this discussion. We always welcome your presence there.
And if you want to ask any more questions about this show, about Sarah, we're not giving her information out, but get in touch with us.
Yes.
And we'll get in touch with her for you, okay? And tonight's quote is, I have never interviewed anyone who had a near-death experience who told me that they came back to make money or to spend more time at their jobs away from their families. Instead, they became convinced that they need to be more loving and kind. They react to their experience by living life to its fullest. They believe their lives have a purpose, even if that purpose is obscure to them. Invariably, it involves concepts such as love of family or service to others. They seem to know that the love they create while living will be reflected and radiated back to them when they die. And this is by Melvin Morris, MD, from his book, Parting Visions. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Sarah.
As you look out through the window,